Hi guys, so my name is Abhilasha and I'm a VARC educator on Unacademy, and I have been doing this reading comprehension skill builder course in our skill builder program for CAT 2023 on 99 percentile, which is your favorite uh, channel for CAT preparation. Remember to connect with me on Telegram using MBA CAT 23, and if you subscribe to Unacademy, you remember to use AbhiCAT Live. Let's get started. On today's session, we will be talking about strengthening and weakening arguments and how to do it. Before I begin, a quick round of introduction to myself. My name is Abhilasha and I've been teaching for the last 22 years. I have cracked the 99 percentile in CAT VARC section 9 times. I've co-authored a book called Quantitative Aptitude and Reasoning. I've trained over 1 lakh students in exams such as CAT, CLAT, GMAT, GATE, SSC, and so on. What is the agenda of today's class? Well, the agenda of today's class is how do you strengthen an argument? How do you weaken an argument? What are the different formats of the question? And how to solve each one of these. And of course, there is a bonus section also, as always. So let's get started. What is this critical reasoning in RC all about? Let's start learning about it. Well, what is critical reasoning in RC? As we have learned over the years, critical reasoning is a separate section. It is all about understanding the logic that the author uses and then trying and making sense of it. But critical reasoning has now of late become an integral part of reading comprehension. Since 2015, when CAT changed into this current pattern that it is, they brought in critical reasoning into the RC question. So very close to what GMAT is all about. Now, if you look at GMAT reading comprehension, then they do have, if you look at the GMAT VRC, then they do have a separate critical reasoning section, but they also have questions on strengthening the argument or weakening the argument within the reading comprehension section also. So here is what CAT did also. So they brought in the critical reasoning questions into the reading comprehension, did away with the reasoning section absolutely, and here we have critical reasoning in reading comprehension. So let's understand what critical reasoning is, how to solve these questions, what are the different types of questions, and so on. Okay, so what is critical reasoning? The writer's main reason or main logic in an argument, how he connects the different thoughts that he has is called critical reasoning. Your understanding of that is critical reasoning. So the writer's main logic in an argument, how he wants to convey his thought, how he wants to convince the readers, and what are the appropriate arguments made by the author. So these are all the things that we are going to be learning in today's sessions also. Now, how do you strengthen and weaken? So there are certain things that we will talk about, and then we will learn how to understand each one of these. So these are 9 of the things that you need to know about strengthening and weakening or solving a critical reasoning question. So what is an argument? Let's first understand what is an argument. Now, an argument is not a fight between two people. So I am saying, oh, are you going to take this chair or not? And you are saying, no, I'm not going to take the chair. You can take it, and people are fighting about whatever. Well, that's not an argument. Here in critical reasoning, an argument is a set of statements that the author makes to convey a point, and he writes that point there, and then he gives you reasons why that point is valid or why that point is invalid. So generally, an argument will have something that the writer wants to tell you. Okay, so his shall I say his assertion. Okay, and then to prove this assertion right, he has certain reasons. So he has certain reasons. Now, some of the reasons may be written down, some of them may be unwritten. Okay. So the unwritten reasons are called the assumptions. The written reasons, of course, are called the premises. So you have an assertion, what the writer wants to convey. Then you have certain reasons or premises. Okay. And then you have some unwritten reasons or assumptions. All of these added together form an argument. So what the writer wishes to tell you guys is his assertion along with his reasons, both written and unwritten. So the combination of these three is called an argument. Okay. So let me write it down. An argument will be the author's assumption or author's conclusion, which will be combined with his premises or his reasons for something, and along with some assumption that he has made, which he may or may not have written, but it is the assumption. So this is an argument, a set of statements that will be focused towards conveying an idea and then giving you reasons for it or against it. So this is what your argument is. Now, let me quickly erase this and I'll come to the next portion. Okay, how do you identify an assumption? Now, if you have to identify, if we've done our critical reasoning course, so I'm sure you are aware of how to spot the assumption and how to spot the conclusion. But quickly, let us understand what an assumption is. So like I said, assumption is the unwritten reason behind what the writer has said. So let us suppose the writer tells you that Sachin Tendulkar is the world's best batsman, and this is my favorite argument of all the arguments, as he has made, and this may not be factually correct because I have no idea about cricket, he has made 100 centuries. Okay, please forgive me for the historical inaccuracy, it may just be inaccurate factually, right? Now here, so this is an argument. So this is what the author wants to tell you, is that Sachin is the world's best batsman. The reason, I know because of this as, it's a reason indicator or what I call a premise indicator. Therefore, the reason is that he has made 100 centuries. Okay. So this is my premise and this of course is my conclusion or the author's assertion. Now here are my two statements. Now, if somebody has made 100 centuries, does he automatically become the world's best batsman? Now that is the question. So here the author has assumed, that no one else has made 100 centuries. Because if there were other batsmen who had made, let's say Brian Lara had made 100 centuries, then obviously he would also have a claim to being the world's best batsman. So how do I understand that Sachin is the world's best batsman? Because when I say that Sachin has made 100 centuries, I also assume that no one else has made 100 centuries, right? So I assume that no one else has made 100 centuries or more, right? And that is why, because Sachin is the only one in the world who's made 100 centuries, that is why he is the world's best batsman. So this assumption that no one else has made 100 centuries then becomes a very important part of our argument. Okay, and this is what we have assumed. So the assumption is that truth which must be true for your conclusion to be true. So when I say that Sachin has made 100 centuries, and because no one else has made 100 centuries, therefore automatically Sachin becomes the world's best batsman. Okay, so I hope you have understood this. So how I am assuming is, I look at what the reality is, I read the argument, I read the passage, and then I think to myself, okay, what is it that the author has already understood and therefore not written? And that becomes an assumption. Now, when we are strengthening an argument or when we are weakening an argument, guys, it is very important that we understand that we are working with assumptions. In order to strengthen an argument, that means in order to prove it right, I have to find reasons which will prove this right, which will prove that Sachin is the world's best batsman. So in my own mind, I will think of possibilities which will prove that Sachin is the world's best batsman. If I have to weaken the same conclusion, then in my own mind, I will think of statements which will negate this conclusion, which will say, no, Sachin is not the world's best batsman. So imagine if I have to say that Sachin is the world's best batsman and I have to strengthen this argument. For the sake of argument, let us say that I want to strengthen this. So I can say that Sachin has made these 100 centuries in the least period of time. I can also say that apart from these 100 centuries, Sachin has also made 90 half centuries. I can also say that Sachin is the youngest person in the world to have joined the Cricketers Hall of Fame or some such statement. So I can find many supporting ideas. I can find many supporting ideas which will all go on to prove that Sachin is the world's best batsman. So anything that goes on to prove that Sachin is the world's best batsman can be a strengthening argument. Now, what have I done? I have just thought of these. These are possibilities, and I have said, okay, if this happens, then Sachin could be the world's best batsman. If this happens, then Sachin could be the world's best batsman, right? If I could say that, I can come up with reasons which are not written here, but which are valid. So, if they were to be true, Sachin could be the world's best batsman. Similarly, if I have to weaken an argument, now to weaken an argument, I'm going to try and prove it false. So my task here is to prove that Sachin is not the world's best batsman. That's very simple. I can simply say that Brian Lara has also made 100 international centuries. In fact, he has made 150 international centuries. Simple. I have weakened this argument by saying that there's another person who's made 150 centuries. I could have said that Sachin has not made 100 centuries. So your data is incorrect. I can just directly say that this premise is false. I could have said that Sachin is not the world's best batsman. By the Cricket Association of the World, they have said that, let's say, whoever, Don Bradman is the world's best batsman because his average is the best in the world. Whatever, you can find things which will prove that Sachin is not the world's best batsman. Now please understand that when I'm strengthening, I am thinking of things and making assumptions. When I'm weakening, again, even then I am doing what? I'm thinking of possibilities, I'm thinking of assumptions, and then I am trying to answer this question. So one very important fact here, whenever you are strengthening or weakening any argument, guys, what are you doing? Essentially, you are thinking up of assumptions. You're imagining things and you're saying, hey, if this were true, then this statement would be right. So you've strengthened it. If you say, hey, if this were false, or if this were true, then this statement would be false. So you have weakened it. So to weaken the author's argument or to strengthen the author's argument, first find what is he saying. So in an RC, the main idea is what he's trying to say. Unless they've asked you to weaken or strengthen a specific statement, in that case, you go to that statement and find the reason why he has said that. Other than that, if he says, how do you strengthen or weaken the author's conclusion, then you are trying to strengthen or weaken the main idea of the passage. So find the main idea. Remember, I've already taught you how to identify the main idea: characters, flow of thought, and the tone of the passage. These are the three things that will help you identify the main idea. Okay, remember that. Okay, character, flow, and tone. CFT, oh my goodness, what a acronym. CFT will help you identify the main idea. So use your CFT. Identify what the main idea is, and then in your own mind think, okay, how can I prove this to be true if you want to strengthen it? Or how can I prove this to be false if you want to weaken it, right? So this is how you can strengthen or weaken a main idea or the author's argument in a passage. When you are effectively strengthening, then there are two things you can do. You can either find a supporting idea or you can find a repetition of the author's main idea. Both of these are ways of strengthening it. If you wish to weaken an argument, then you could undermine or prove it false. You could just negate the argument, or you could find an alternative solution also which will weaken the argument. So when you are weakening the argument, when you are weakening the author's conclusion, you could directly say, hey, this is false. You could find a different answer. You could find a different conclusion or a different argument, and that would work too. Or you could find an alternative conclusion also. So I could say that, hey, Donald Bradman is the world's best batsman. Or hey, Sunil Gavaskar is the world's best batsman. Or hey, Saurav Ganguly is the world's best batsman. Whatever. I could find alternatives also to Sachin Tendulkar. And I could have strengthened or weakened either ways. So when you're strengthening or weakening, guys, remember that this question is actually based on the assumption. So if you are able to understand what the writer has assumed, what the writer has thought to be true, then you will be able to solve this question in a very easy manner. Okay, so that's very, very important that you should be able to understand all of this. Okay. So you should be able to understand all of this, and you should be able to think of the assumption whenever you're trying to get the question right. Okay. All right. So I hope you've been able to understand this thing. All right, let's try and strengthen or weaken the main idea. Here is a passage that we had done earlier. So some of you who have already seen the main idea passage, remember we've talked about this, the European zoos and what they were doing. So I brought the same passage. So let's try and strengthen and weaken the main idea. So for all of you who are new here, what I will request you is take a minute, pause this video and view it, read the passage and then go on to the question. For all those of you who have already read the passage with me, I will still read it together. Okay, so let's do it. So European zoos of the late 19th and early 20th century incorporated the visual cultures of their animals' native homes into ornate buildings. So wherever the animals came from, they had made these fancy buildings in the zoos just to show off the strangeness or the exoticness of the animal. Reflections of their nation's colonial aspirations. The Berlin Zoo's ostrich house resembled an Egyptian temple with large columns flanking the entrance and scenes of ostrich hunts decorating the exterior. Berlin's elephant enclosure was built in the spirit of a Hindu temple. So elephant is put in a Hindu temple. The home for its giraffe adopted an Islamic cultural style. Zoos in Cologne, Lisbon, Antwerp and Budapest, among others, created similar exhibits. These zoos were no home for subtlety, nothing subtle. The animals they contained were exotic to most visitors. The buildings that did the containing reinforced the sensation. So very beautiful. So the animals were exotic and the buildings that were housing these animals reinforced the idea of the exoticity. Okay. So here is our passage. Now, what has the writer said? The writer has said that in those times, 19th and early 20th century, the zoos would create buildings to emphasize the fact that the animal was exotic, right? So we have said that. Now let us try and strengthen this idea. Now to strengthen this, we will try and find something that will say, yes, the writer is right. The writer has done this, okay? So find something which either reiterates the writer's idea, okay, it's a reiteration, or something which proves the writer to be correct. Okay, proves or supports the writer's idea. So take a minute and find this answer for me. Again, you can pause the video and then do this. Which of the following best strengthens the author's argument? Buildings in the late 19th and early 20th European zoos decided not to bring any strange animals to the zoo. Well, this is incorrect. This did not happen in the passage at all, right? And this would not strengthen the writer's idea also, because we are talking about emphasizing the strangeness. Many buildings in the late 19th and early 20th century zoos were built to emphasize the grandeur of the host country. Well, this is something that was mentioned, but this was not the main idea. We were not trying to emphasize the grandeur of the host country. We were trying to emphasize the exoticness of that nation from where we had got the animal. So European zoos in the late 19th and early 20th century tried to emphasize the exotic origins of the animal by housing them in exotic buildings. Wow, this is what the writer had said. Reiteration, remember? So reiteration, so possibly the right answer. During the late 19th and early 20th century, most of the animals came from other European countries. Well, this is factually incorrect and therefore cannot be one of the answers, right? So let's eliminate this. So then the best answer here would be option C, the one which is a reiteration of the writer's concept and the one that best strengthens the author's argument. Remember this, okay? To strengthen, you can either reiterate or you can prove some supporting fact to the writer's idea. Let's look at the weakening question also. Oh, so this is just the correct answer. All right, the weakening question. So again, now we have to say that the buildings are not made to emphasize the exoticness of the building, that is of the animal. That is what we will try to say, okay? We will try and negate the idea that the buildings were made to emphasize the exoticness, correct? So let's do this. Let's take a moment. Okay, buildings in the late 19th and early 20th, European zoos decided to not bring any strange animal to the zoo. Many buildings in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, European zoos were built to emphasize the grandeur of the host country. The European zoos in the late 19th and early 20th century tried to emphasize the exotic origins of the animals by housing them in exotic buildings. Okay, so this is kind of strengthening it. During the late 19th and early 20th century, most European zoos were research facilities. Okay, now interesting. If we have said that the buildings were made to emphasize the exoticness, right? That is what we have said. Now, so clearly C is a strengthening argument, cannot be a weakening argument. Now, if I can say that the buildings were not built to emphasize the exoticness of the animal, then that would work. So look at option 2. That the zoos were built to emphasize what? The grandeur of the host country. That means you were not trying to emphasize the exoticness of the animal. Instead, you were trying to emphasize the exoticness or the grandness of the host country. And therefore, this is the one which says, no, the writer's idea is incorrect. Okay. If you look at option 1, of course, we know it is absolutely irrelevant because the passage has very clearly talked about the idea that we've brought strange animals. So clearly A cannot be part of our game. And also that most European zoos were research facilities also doesn't really work for us. Okay. So eliminate. So best answer here would be B. Okay. I hope you've understood how we have weakened the argument by proving that the writer had not done a certain thing. So we have said that, hey, he was doing this, he was doing something else. Okay, so that. So if the writer's conclusion is C, we say not C, but D, right? And this is a good way of weakening. So I can weaken this by saying, hey, not the conclusion, an alternate conclusion. I could have weakened it by simply saying not C also, right? That the buildings are not made to emphasize. Or I could have said, hey, P, therefore Q, something like that. I could have given a different argument altogether, which would have also said, yeah, that your argument is absolutely irrelevant. So whatever. Okay. All right. Now let's understand each type in detail. So what does the CR question look like? Let's break it up. Okay. So the question types are like this. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports the conclusion above? So again, strengthen. Which of the following does, this if true will be there in every question. You assume it is true. Does most to justify the researcher's prediction. So researcher has made a prediction. We are trying to prove it right. Okay. So justification, proof. Which of the following provides the best reason for believing that the new strategy will be successful? So you find a reason for saying that the strategy will be successful. Which of the following most strengthens the argument above? Again, strengthen. Which of the following most strongly supports the mayor's claim? So find the mayor's claim and then find something that will support his argument. Which of the following provides the best basis or best reason for something? So again, you're trying to find something that will support. Which of the following, if true, provides justification for something? For the writer's conclusion, whatever, he may have given you something. Which of the following, if true, provides a piece of evidence, proof in favor of some plan or some conclusion? So you are now trying to prove that the writer is correct. So this is how you can strengthen an argument. This can be the different types of questions that will be asked from you when they ask you to strengthen an argument. Okay, find supporting proof. So like I said, to strengthen, you can either repeat the author's argument or you can find something that proves author to be correct. ठीक है? Both will be perfectly okay as strengthening arguments. Now in weakening arguments, now the word weaken has many words synonym to it, right? So for example, weakens the conclusion. There is a variant which is a weakness. There is another one which would cast the most serious doubt. Cast the most serious doubt on the validity of the argument. It could also be raised the most serious doubt regarding something. Which of the following calls into question the author's argument? Again, that is the same thing. Your call into question means doubt. Seriously undermines the author's argument. Mayor has a claim. Find a disadvantage or what is damaging to the argument. A plan is ill-suited or otherwise unlikely to succeed. Find a criticism of the argument. You could have simply said negate an argument. Okay. You could have simply said would prove author to be false. That also works directly, right? So any of these question types, when you are talking about weakening an argument, let us say the author's conclusion is C. So there can be three ways of weakening it. Number one, you directly falsify it. So you can say it is not C. Number two is you can find an alternate solution. So you can say not C, but D. Or you can say that reason is R and therefore D. तो आप एक रीजन दे दीजिए दूसरे कंक्लूजन का और कह दीजिए भाई रीजन ये है इसलिए C हो ही नहीं सकता है D होगा. So that will also work. Okay. So these are the various ways you can weaken the author's conclusion. Now, how do you solve these questions? Let's talk about them in detail. Okay. Now, what is a strengthen or weaken question? What are the main characteristics? All right. So let us look at what are the characteristics of the strengthen or weaken the conclusion question. So you can ask to support or weaken the conclusion or argument in any way. Answer can support or weaken in a minor or a major way. The question can just ask you to weaken or strengthen a conclusion. The answer can either support or weaken in a very small way or in a big way also. The stimulus will always be an argument, obviously. So you will always strengthen a conclusion, not a fact. So you have to do what? You have to identify, isolate and assess the premises and the conclusion. Like I said, take your argument, right? If it's a one paragraph, take your argument, identify what the conclusion is, what the premise is, because you're going to be weakening the conclusion. If it's a passage, if it's an RC, then spot the main idea. Okay, and the main idea is what you will try and weaken. Okay, so therefore you have to do this first of all. Okay, so focus on the conclusion or on the main idea. Now the information in the stimulus, the information that is given to you, that is suspect. That means we will always doubt the information that is given. We'll say, hey, is this the information? Is this correct? So we'll always doubt it. There are reasoning errors which are present, okay, which can be corrected by the answer choice. And therefore the correct answer would be, possibly there, where the reasoning flaws are spotted. Strong prephrases are possible. Okay. The answer choices can bring in new information which was not present in the stimulus. That's perfectly okay. Because the answer choice is an assumption, therefore it may assume anything. The passage says which of the following, if true, would strengthen, if true, would weaken. So it does not have to be necessarily true or given in the passage, but if it were true, what would it do to the conclusion or to the argument? So the answer choices may have new information and that's perfectly okay. While an assumption is necessary to an argument, a strengthened weakened answer might not be the essential assumption for the argument to be true. Remember this. So when you have an argument, the argument comprises of a conclusion, has a premise and has an assumption. Right? Now we know that the conclusion is equal to the premise plus the assumption. Okay. And when we strengthen or weaken, we find another assumption. Okay. So this assumption, this is assumption number 2. Okay. This assumption is not necessarily the same as the original assumption or assumption 1 that is given in the passage. So these are two different assumptions. Okay. And this assumption number 2 is not necessarily essential for the argument. Okay. It is something that if were true, then it could weaken or strengthen the argument. But it's not the essential one, because if it were the essential one, then it would be part of your argument right away. So that is not true. Okay. So it might not be essential for the argument to be true. The correct answer will at least somewhat venture outside the scope of the immediate argument. That means it will most probably introduce something new. That's very important. Okay. So whenever you will get an assumption answer, it will bring in something new. So whenever you have a strengthen or weaken the conclusion kind of an answer, you will have some additional information that will be in the options. And so please don't close your eyes to new information. In an assumption question, in a strengthen question, in a weaken question, the new information is perfectly acceptable as part of the passage, okay, as part of an option, and it could be the correct option. So that's important. Now, how do you strengthen? So first of all, you identify what the conclusion is, right? Spot what the conclusion is, okay. Personalize the argument. So put yourself into the situation and think how you will react. So you are now trying to paraphrase the author. You say, okay, this is what he has said, this is what he has said, this is where I would be if I were in that situation. Then look for weakness in the argument, any gap, any hole that is tailor-made to be eliminated as a correct strengthen answer. Remember, we have done fallacies in some course, right? Now a fallacy is something that is a flaw in reasoning. So the fallacy is something that may just help you strengthen. So if you eliminate the fallacy in the passage, you will be able to strengthen an option, right? So look for the fallacies, look for the weakness in the argument and remove that, and that will help you. An answer that highlights an assumption of the author will also strengthen the conclusion. So if there is an assumption that the author makes, that can also be a strengthen answer. If the argument stimulus talks of a survey or a poll, any answer choice which makes the survey or poll prove to be true or correct, which highlights the soundness or establishes its credibility, will be correct. Because survey or poll is the biggest fallacy most of the time. So to weaken it, we say, hey, the survey is false. To strengthen it, hey, we can say, hey, this is the most credible survey that is ever to be done. The correct answer can strengthen just a little or a lot, and both will work. Now, how you correct the answer or how you strengthen, you can fix a weakness of the conclusion. You can validate an assumption made by the argument, or you can introduce additional supporting evidence. So, if there is a problem in the argument, if there is a flaw or fallacy in the argument, remove that, strengthen. If the author has made an assumption, prove it right. Validate the assumption. Strengthen. You can bring in additional supporting evidence to prove the author's conclusion right. Strengthened. Okay. The incorrect answers will be something that weakens. An incorrect answer may be a shell game. That is the idea, the stimulus or the argument just changed by a little few words. Or it could be out of scope, which will miss the point or the conclusion. So any of these could be the incorrect answer type. Now let's take a look at this question. I'll ask you to pause the question here and take a minute, read it, and then try and solve it. So here we are. So excavation of the, very quickly, please understand that whenever you're doing a question, you must always find something that supports the author's hypothesis and then do it. Okay, let's read it. So excavation of the ancient city of Kurion on the island of Cyprus revealed a pattern of debris and collapsed buildings typical of towns devastated by earthquakes. Archaeologists have hypothesized, okay, so I know this is where I'm going to be looking for this is the conclusion that I'm going to strengthen. Because it has said, strongly supports the archaeologist hypothesis. The that the destruction was due to a major earthquake known to have occurred near the island in AD 365. Okay, so in AD 365 an earthquake had happened which has caused this destruction, right? So I have to prove this true. Okay, so what am I trying to prove true? That earthquake in 365 AD destroyed the island. Okay, okay, destroyed the city. Okay, so that. Now let's take a look. So the option has to either reiterate or restate it, or it has to prove that yes, in AD 365 the island was destroyed. Uh, so find some supporting proof. Okay, or if there is a fallacy here, apparently there is no fallacy that is visible. So therefore we cannot really say, hey, let's correct the fallacy. So let's take a look at the options. Bronze ceremonial drinking vessels that are often found in graves dating from years preceding and following AD 365 were also found in several graves. Now the problem is, if they have been, the vessels are also from years following AD 365, then could Korean have been destroyed in AD 365? Not really. So I can't take this to be the correct answer. No coins minted after 365 were found in Korean, but coins minted before that year were found in abundance. Okay, so no coins were minted after, no coins that were found were minted after AD 365. So this could help. This could say that after 365 nothing happened because the city was destroyed. Modern histories of Cyprus mention that an earthquake occurred near the island in AD 365. Okay, so there are some modern histories which are mentioning it, but how do I know the credibility of these modern histories? What is the credibility? Okay, so this is a question. I'll put a star on this, but okay. Several small statues carved in styles current in Cyprus in AD 300 and 400 were found in Korean. So that means statues after 365 were also found. So this will not help. I'll eliminate. Inscriptions in the form of a Greek alphabet that was definitely used in Cyprus after 365 were found in Korean. So I will eliminate. So I have eliminated three options, option A, option D and option E. And I am left with two options, option B and option C. Now option B says that no coins, many coins that were minted before 365 were found in Korean, but no coins, not even a single coin that was minted after AD 365 was found in Korean. So that's one. And the second one says that most modern histories of Cyprus mention that an earthquake occurred near the island in AD 365. But does that necessarily mean that the destruction was due to this earthquake? Was the destruction due to this earthquake? Well, let's take a minute. I hope you have understood this question. Let's take a look at the right answer. The correct answer, yes, is B. Now, the problem with C is this exact same problem that happens in surveys. Because a survey is saying something, is it necessary that it will be true? No. And also, this one says most modern histories, but it doesn't say all modern histories. So I don't know if all of them say it. And it's entirely possible that most of them are incorrect also, because a lot of times history books are written to display certain things which may or may not be true. Okay, so therefore best answer will be B. Okay, I hope you got that. All right. Okay, how do you weaken a conclusion? Okay, let's take a minute. In order to weaken a conclusion, again you identify the conclusion and your answer should break the author's conclusion. So you have to prove that the conclusion is false. That's your task. So spot the conclusion, find a gun, and you are the squid game player and you're going to be squidding these conclusions right out of the game. Personalize the argument, place yourself inside the situation and think how you are going to react. Look for the weaknesses in the argument, any gap or hole. Okay, eliminate those fallacies. Any gap, any fallacy in the argument is the one that you will try and spot. That's the one that will weaken it. An answer that highlights a fallacy of the author will also weaken his conclusion. So spot the fallacy. If you can spot the fallacy, you've got it. If the argument stimulus talks of a survey, poll, any answer choice that highlights its soundness or establishes its credibility will not be correct. Any answer choice that proves that the survey is false could be the correct answer. The correct answer can weaken just a lot or a little, either ways. Now the correct answer will weaken by how? Identifying a weakness of the conclusion. You can identify a weakness. You can invalidate an assumption made by the author, or you can introduce additional weakening evidence, and all of these will work. The incorrect answer type can strengthen. It could be a shell game, that is the stimulus is incorrectly framed, or it could be just an out of scope answer, or it could be a distortion also. Okay, so any of these could be the incorrect answer choice which you could use to eliminate. Now let's take a look at a question. Again, I will suggest that you pause this video here, read the question, take your time, and then solve. Okay. Now, if true, which of the following most calls into question? Calls into question, weaken, right? We know that. So weaken what? Weaken the conclusion. What is the conclusion? The statement that comes after the therefore. So if Arctica remains in production, the mango tree will eventually become extinct. This is what I have to weaken, right? Now let's read the passage and then try and understand. Arctica, a new drug that can cure a common disease that until now has been fatal for 50% of those infected, is made from the roots of the India mango tree. The mango tree is rare in India and large quantities of the roots are necessary in order to make Arctica. So if Arctica remains in production, mango tree will eventually become extinct. Well, interesting. It says the mango tree is rare in India. But is it rare everywhere else in the world? So immediately this struck me. Is it rare everywhere else in the world also? Or is it just rare in India? So is it possible that I grow this elsewhere? Or is it possible that I can grow it in big numbers in India itself? Possibility. So here is something that if I can find, I will be able to weaken this argument. So let's take a look. The company that holds the patent to Arctica has exclusive rights to produce the drug. Well, this is irrelevant for us. How does that have any sense? This just says that Arctica will be produced for 10 years more. But does that necessarily mean that the mango tree will eventually become extinct? No. So this is just out of scope for us. I will eliminate this. Out of scope. Eliminate. Irrelevant for us. Arctica is expensive and is not currently covered by most major insurance plans. So that means that people will not use a lot of Arctica. So therefore low demand. So if it is low demand, then is it really going to cause the mango tree to become extinct? I'll put a star on this. Okay. Mango leaves are considered a gourmet delicacy. Are we really worried about the mango leaves? No. So out of scope for us, eliminate this very directly. So I have already eliminated option A. I have already eliminated option C. The mango tree can be easily grown in other parts of the world. See, this is what I was saying. My perfect answer. Producing Arctica is time consuming and expensive for the drug manufacturer. How does that have any relevance to us? So eliminate. So now I've got two options. Option D saying that mango tree can be grown anywhere else in the world. So it's not going to be rare and it's not eventually going to become extinct. B says it is very expensive and is not covered by most major insurance plans. So it's not going to remain in production and therefore the mango tree will not become extinct. You see, this also weakens it. Okay, but because the question says most calls into question, which one directly weakens that? No, the mango tree will not become extinct. That's D. And therefore, I think option D has to be the best answer. Let's take a moment and check. Yes, of course. Like I said, very good. Okay, guys. All right. So I hope you've understood how to strengthen or weaken an argument. Okay. In the practice set that will be given just after this class, there will be questions. So here is a list of my students in CAT 2023-21 who have cracked the exam. CAT 22 results are still being made because of course it's just GDPI time and we will do it after this. If you wish to be here in this panel, then all you have to do is join me for the CAT 2023 classes. Congratulations to our CAT 22 toppers who have done so well. Uh, my apologies. Here is again another list of the CAT 22 toppers. Okay, the Unacademy CAT 23 scholarship test happens on 15th of January from 12 to 1 and on 29th of January from 12 to 1. Ranks 1 to 5 will have 100% scholarship, 6 to 25 50%, 25 to 50 30%, and 51 to 100 will have 20% scholarship. So if you wish to take a scholarship, do join us using AbhiCAT Live. The Zero to Zenith batch started on 5th of January. I am taking classes in this, so remember to use AbhiCAT Live and join in. Amazing USPs in this batch: one subscription for all batches, structured courses, 25,000 plus practice questions, 100 plus mocks, in-class doubt solving, educated curated notes, and mentorship from our experts. If you're somebody who's going to be repeating their CAT to experience and going for CAT 23, then the repeaters batch perfect score is the perfect one for you. Starts on 16th of January. Code remains the same, AbhiCAT Live. Sorry, huh? Okay, the USP of the perfect score batch is that the course will be completed by May 23 and then 6 months of extensive revision and practice. One subscription, 25,000 plus questions, 100 plus mocks, in-class doubt solving, notes, study material, CAT expert mentorship, and I am graduates also. Aspire and Inspire GDPI Award batch for 22 starts 10th of January. Amazing. Again, subscription can be taken by AbhiCAT Live. The Unacademy Light subscription has 10 full-length mocks, 4 full-length mocks for OMETs, 25 sectionals, and 25,000 plus questions at $9.99 only. Again, you can use AbhiCAT Live to subscribe. The Unacademy CAT subscription has a plus subscription as well as an iconic subscription, either of which will be very wonderful for you. Now my classes happen, special classes happen Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. plus classes happen at 10 p.m. Monday to Friday. So please do join me. We are doing RC currently. And on YouTube, 99 Percentile Club, we are doing RCs Tuesdays and Fridays 9 p.m. On Let's Crack Verbal, 10 a.m. Monday, Wednesday and Friday, you have the Hindu Aeon editorial, and 8 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have the GDPI Award course that is ongoing. Thank you so much for joining in. Remember to use AbhiCAT Live to unlock and subscribe. And also remember to use AbhiCAT Live to take advantage of all these lovely offers that are ongoing. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.